We'll begin with the history of the British Empire. Holmes, would it be an issue to share your textbook with Miss Whiteley?
He did so, sliding the book to me together with an extravagant scoff.
You can use it. I don't need to read it.
Really? You don't need it at all?
I only have it out in an effort to be polite. I've long memorized its contents.
The entire thing?
In that case, please recite page 65, The Rise of Henry VIII and the Fall of the Queens. Certainly. Born as the second son of King Henry VII, Henry VIII reigned over the British Empire with an iron fist, ascending as a gifted tyrant, whilst leaving both a glorious and unfortunate stain on his people's history. That wasn't word for word, but it will do. Thank you.
What a memory you have! I'm impressed.
I don't recall asking you to praise me. My God, must he always be so stubborn? You lot, give me some peace and shut it.
The command was from a pale-haired boy sitting a few seats away, and though Holmes wore a grimace as part of his dress, this one possessed a scowl that could send champions running. Oh my, pardon us.
He just wanted to sleep. Mr. Millers, we are in the middle of a lecture.
My first class ended with no more incidents, and second period began. Time to meet the other boy. In this class, we study proper etiquette. The slate is clean, but I shall be strict, for we've much to do and so little time to do it. The road to blossoming into fine ladies or gentlemen is a long one. We will begin your semester with mastering one of the essentials, correct posture when standing and moving about. It matters not how smart you are, it matters not how extravagant your gown is. If you choose to walk hunched over and chin put out, then everything is ruined. Now, take out a folded handkerchief and place it atop your head.
Aha! We need to walk without it falling, right? I can manage that well enough.
Wrong! Next, place a full glass of water on top of that handkerchief. Oh, then we're to walk without spilling anything? Wrong again! My dear, you are to dance without spilling anything. Not even a drop? That's impossible. That's the way, Miss Marple. Marvelous! Naturally. Perhaps it did come naturally to this girl, for she danced with masterful elegance, and all the while not a single drop had found its way out of her glass. Well then, I'm going to give it a try. Ouch! A heavy thump followed by a shatter sounded from the back of the classroom. Mr. Lupin, this is unacceptable. I fear I have no choice but to give you an additional assignment with your supplementary lessons after school. Ah! I should not have been so confident to become distracted. Lupin's accident became mine next when I lost my balance. Oh, drat, it's cold! Miss Whiteley, you have spilt your glass and have failed today's lesson.
No!
Master Watson, you dropped the handkerchief before you could even attempt at balancing a glass. You're no better than Mr. Lupin. An additional assignment shall be accompanying your supplementary lessons as well. Now, Mr. Holmes, it's your turn.
Miss Cicely, I do apologize if this sounds crude, but you must be aware of the differences between myself and them. As a gentleman, I could never deign myself to take part in this folly.
Folly?
What difference? All we did was participate as instructed.
You have failed today's lesson. Any student who refuses their instructors needs to learn more in etiquette than dancing. Mr. Holmes, it would be my pleasure to give you a special assignment.
What?
And Mr. Watson, you're to see me after class.
Yes, ma'am.
Those boys.
Welcome to third period. I am Mr. Underwood, and I'm here on behalf of all matters related to pharmacology. Various toxins, plants that give you nasty blisters and rashes, potions that paralyze, you name it, and I shall be pleased to learn you of it. You may use this coveted knowledge and become yet another criminal, or you could also use this same knowledge to protect yourselves and learn the symptoms that spell danger.
Goodness, this is all rather frightening.
The world of toxicology is as vast as it is fascinating. When you hear the word poison, you might be inclined to believe they're all the same, and yet there are hundreds upon thousands of variations. There are poisons extracted from minerals, like arsenic and mercury. There are poisons extracted from plants, like aconite and morphine. And we mustn't forget the poisons extracted from living creatures. Think of the tetrodotoxin from a blowfish, or a cobra's neurotoxin.
Nailed it.
I strongly advise that you wash your hands before eating and thoroughly inspect the smell, the taste, and even the people who present you your food. That's very fine advice, sir, but why are you displaying an empty cage? Well. Our cobra has chosen to flee its cage in favor of a stroll.
No! Nearly every student, myself included, let out a sudden shriek. A cobra? A cobra? He must have known how deadly they are. It was common knowledge.
Holmes! Can a cobra kill us? It possesses a neurotoxin, so it's most likely to inhibit the movement of one's muscles. Your breathing would be obstructed, and should the worst come... but we ought to focus on catching it for now. Come on! You can't stop in the middle of it!
There it is! A nervous yelp and artful shambling of language turned me to the corner of the classroom. Help! The snake! It's around my feet! Ouch!
That's just a rope.
We can't have this. Nothing good can come of us being in a panic.
Holmes, let's catch it. I'll pin its head down, so can you grab it from behind? All right.
That's dangerous!
No more dangerous than it slithering out of its cage. I don't want to see you get hurt, so would you mind leaving the room with the rest of the class?
I noticed it. There it was, the cobra, observing me from high on its shelf. On a shelf. Its jaw hung open in complete stillness, but also with that small, disjointed vibration, a subtle tremble, that came from hunger too unsated to ignore. Ah! I could only think to call to one person. Watson!
Watch out, Emily!
Watson reached for my arm and pulled me behind his back.
Are you hurt? Are you all right?
I'm fine. A bit surprised is all. Thank you, Watson.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're safe.
Watson left my side in a hurry, as if to hide his face from me.
Holmes, it went that way! Then let's do as planned. Got it. Watch yourself! Yes, I know. The same to you, I suppose. Ha!
Watson firmly held the tiny reptile's head with both hands, as Holmes restrained its body. It was a finicky beast that rebelled and writhed within their grip, but they held it with enough urgency to promptly have it returned to its cage.
Phew, glad that's over.
Thank goodness it's safe now.
That is no cobra, Mr. Underwood, but a common rat snake. Huh? A rat snake? Correct! You're a man who knows his snakes, Mr. Holmes. And since he was unaware that it was harmless, we must applaud Watson's display of courage. Oh, sir, that's a British trick.
It's good that no one was, hurt. At least we have that.
I'm in awe. Huh! But it was a thrill you won't soon forget. I'm sure you'll want to take pharmacology more seriously after that, So with that, let the real lesson begin. I'm too tired for lessons.
The time to lunch had arrived, and it was the liveliest I'd seen the classroom yet. Mr. Mackenzie entered the room through the shuffle of lunchboxes and chatter between schoolmates.
Slater, were you able to collect the deposits for this month? Yes, they were, collected. I should like to take them if it isn't any bother. Thank you for helping with this every month.
Slater's distress from earlier in the day was still apparent as he looked to the teacher, looked away, and scratched his head restlessly.
Is there a problem? I can't find the leather bag, sir. The one with the money. What do you mean? You always place it inside your desk, don't you? Ordinarily, yes, and I did so this time, too. It was there when I checked between second and third period, but it's gone now.
Students listening to the conversation whispered amongst each other. I, like the rest, leant closer for a better listen, clutching my lunchbox instinctively. How could this be? What news? Mr. Mackenzie's expression following the news was fierce, and his tone as he spoke solemn.
Is there anyone here that knows where the money went? Mr. Mackenzie, if I may, I don't suspect that's the wisest way to ask. Few could answer so plainly when in front of an audience. True. You make a fine point, Mr. Holmes. All right, class, close your eyes. If anyone has clues regarding this case, please raise your hand.
The air was stagnant.
I see. You can open your eyes now.
I looked over to Holmes, who was in his correct seat next to me. But he wasn't looking at me. Rather, he studied the room rapidly, concluding his surveillance with a barely audible puff.
I am sorry to doubt each of you so. If there is someone here with any information, be you directly involved or a bystander, come speak to me today. I shall be in the staff lounge when I don't have a lesson to teach. That's all I'll say for the present. Now it is your lunch hour, and lunch is meant to be enjoyed without worry. Excuse me.
The whispers turned into outlandish, fevered suspicions the second the door was closed behind the teacher. Who could steal a bag when they know they're among detectives? This is a case, isn't it? I didn't expect such a thing on my first day.
Let's eat together, Emily. If you'd like, that is.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to.
You look troubled by something.
Do I? Well, I wouldn't know what.
All right, then. I won't say another word about it. Since it's such a nice day outside, how would you like to lunch in the courtyard? You should join us, Holmes. Holmes?
Watson gripped the unmoving boy's shoulder.
What do you want, Watson? Isn't it fantastic, Emily? Holmes said he'd join us. Excuse me? Unhand me this instant. Don't pull so hard.
Watson, Holmes, and I seated ourselves along the grass in the courtyard. We were not alone. The day was beautiful, as it was clear, and so several others had gathered to spend their time reading books, resting their eyes, or soaking in the sun. Or I suppose they could have found the outdoors refreshing when the classroom had been so tense. I took a peek inside Watson's lunchbox. It was a careful arrangement of mimosa salad, mashed potatoes, several slices of roast beef, and orange compote for dessert. My! I could have a nibble off of every part of that. It looks delicious.
Isn't it just? Our landlady makes them for us. Oh, Holmes and I are flatmates, by the way. She even cooks us breakfast and dinner. The best landlady you could have.
I didn't know flats came with meals. How sweet she is. And if the two of you are flatmates, then where might your family be living?
Our dads rent their own flat together in the same building as their office. My family's home is in a suburb in London. You're welcome to visit me and Holmes any time, but it could be a bit small for you since you live in a mansion. Do you mind, Holmes? I don't.
The response was clipped. With nothing more to say, he continued to eat through a thin mouth that could have stretched thinner were anyone to interrupt him again. And why was this? I was curious. Is something upsetting you?
Never mind him. He talks plenty when he feels up to it. You're thinking about the money in Slater, aren't you? I am. The situation is nagging at the back of my mind. It strikes me that no matter how he searched for the bag, he could not find it. Slater is cautious. He isn't the type to leave it anywhere. He would have kept it somewhere he knew was secure. I'd prefer not to think it, but do you suspect someone in class stole it? I don't think that's the case.
Neither do I. I was a new addition for this semester, and yet such a positive impression had been stamped upon me that said not one schoolmate stood out to me as a thief. It couldn't be someone in our class.
Then what do you think? Yes, well, I'd like to keep that to myself for now. But have you noticed how strange Slater's been since this morning? His gaze and fingers were unsteady. He could barely stand straight. Do you not find his lack of composure unusual? He was blinking at an astonishing rate as well, oftentimes a sign that one is lying or hiding something. When Mr. Mackenzie called for him to collect the deposits, it was as if he had something else on his mind entirely. You gathered all that? I didn't notice a thing.
Could I speak with you for a moment? Just as we were discussing him, Slater had approached to engage us.
Slater! It's a shame what happened earlier, and you look terribly ill, you know that?
Thank you, but there's no need for concern. I feel plenty well. My health, at any rate. I feel awful for having caused such a fuss. Everyone in class was thought to be a thief, and all because of me. I truly am sorry. That's all I wanted to say. See you after lunch.
When he turned to leave, Holmes spoke up.
If I could have a moment of your time, Slater. Holmes?
Slater listened and turned right back around.
You wish to speak of more serious issues, like that of the lost deposits.
There we have it!
But you haven't quite got the courage to speak as of yet, have you? Having enough courage to tell me what you know will not only benefit you, it will serve to re-establish trust amongst our schoolmates.
Of course, but you see, it is a difficult matter to discuss openly. Would you object to continuing this conversation in the garden behind the academy?
I don't imagine anyone will be coming here.
I'm more curious why you've come, Miss Whiteley. He came to speak with me, not you. There are kinder ways of saying the same thing. I will only ask you once to shut up, Watson. Now pardon my severity, but can you leave? Our problems are liable to increase if you twirled about gossiping everything you were to hear.
And why not say the same to Watson?
He is my assistant. He should be here.
Well, I am not an assistant, but I had my deposit stolen. I'm as much a part of this as you.
That is true.
Point taken.
And if we're to start with the deposits, then I didn't steal them. Please believe me.
The way in which he professed was heavy with pain.
We're well aware of that. No one is champing at the bit to accuse you.
You don't doubt me?
I have been your schoolmate for a full year. It takes little reasoning to know you aren't the sort who would resort to theft. I trust you. Rather than the perpetrator, your behavior mirrors that of a victim. You speak to me whilst your eyes move without rest. Your mind is as occupied as your behavior is nervous, and you dig your nails into your arm. Taking such observations into account, I'm led to believe you are hiding something and are fearful for what may happen if what is hidden comes to light. What other conclusion could I have reached?
Holmes's tongue raced to finish all he said in a single breath. Watson appeared used to this manner, but Slater and I were astounded.
With that done, I've now something to ask you. It is a very simple question. You placed the money in the bag, correct? Did the bag disappear with the money?
Silence. At one side was a detective with a need for answers to the grotesque, and at the other was a shrinking boy, speechless, terrified to speak the truth, even when he held those desired answers.
You remember when I said I trusted you, don't you? Then please, answer me. I need only a yes or no.
Might he be talking about the bag that was stained with ink? Holmes remained unblinking.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Then, Watson, I have need of a favor. What is it?
Holmes leant closely to his assistant's ear and whispered,
This is some sort of prank, isn't it? You're better at this than I am, aren't you? I need you. Oh, all right. I'll be right back.
Watson, apparently in agreement, turned heel and left. Where is he going?
I asked him to run an errand for me. He has a good nose for this sort of errand, one might say.
I was curious, but stumped for clues. No matter, I suppose. The answer would soon be upon me, even if I couldn't resist my head tilting inquisitively as I speculated the outcome.
Well, now that's sorted. Are you ready to talk?
Holmes's attention returned to Slater.
Ugh!
Yet he was newly frozen in place. His ill complexion grew 3 times paler, and his mouth twisted open and closed with no voice coming out. Whatever made him so distraught was behind Holmes. Yes, it had to be behind him. It left him so very afraid, this terrifying thing. What's wrong? You look...
Clave.
Who? Flat-footed, heavy steps sounded from behind me. I made to see who it was.
And just what brings you here, Slater?
I met eyes with a giant. The color of the tartan on his uniform was different to ours, indicating that he was in his final year of sixth form. Even then, his age didn't leave half the impression his massive physique did. Slater remained petrified.
I'm not doing anything, Clave.
I hear you've lost all that money for your deposit. Did you now? That is interesting. We only learned of it ourselves. It was also my understanding that no one in our class was to utter a word of the incident to outsiders. Were you eavesdropping from outside our classroom door, perhaps?
The question was redundant, for a smirk reserved for one who knows all the answers spread his lips. Clave, in turn, could either speak of unpleasantness or glare in silence. The tension that stiffened the very air would be the same.
I wasn't eavesdropping. Slater told me. Well then, I'm curious when you heard it from him, but we shall come round to that soon enough. You must know he's been in our company since lunch began.
Was he? But he wasn't here from the...
He was. From the very beginning, he watched us from a distance, waiting as he looked for a chance to approach and talk.
Look.
That was what you were doing, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Oh. Has it still not dawned on you? It is impossible for you to have conversed with Slater if you've only just come from the building. Now, speaking plainly, this is all circumstantial on my part, and I could be wrong. Could.
The massive boy's face reddened with anger the more the boy detective carried on.
You bloody... Found it, Holmes!
Watson! Watson had returned as quickly as he had left. He hurried to us, panting as though he ran with vigor the entire time he'd been away.
This is it, isn't it? It was in the incinerator.
I recognized the bag he was holding. There could be no mistaking it. It was the very same one Slater had used for collecting the deposits. The fabric was more worn than when I last saw it in the classroom, but the reason why was no mystery to be solved upon knowing where Watson had retrieved it.
Your timing is excellent. Moving along, then.
Holmes fiercely locked eyes with Clave.
I've several questions to ask of you. First, when did you hear about this from Slater? You see, I suspect you didn't hear from him at all, and yet you know what happened down to the last detail.
The boy, who grew so deeply red in the face that it wasn't possible to appear more bruised, now twisted his eyebrows and scowled till he possessed a devilish expression, a face fit for one who could no longer adhere to reason. And his fists matched this anger, for they were clenched tightly enough for his nails to break skin and looked eager for violence.
Recall how we only learnt of Slater losing the money during lunch. If I were to guess exactly how you knew, I would say... You think I'm some kind of fool?
Clave raised his fist against Holmes. Watch out, Holmes! I made to dive to his rescue, a silly action, but Watson held me to my place.
Not to worry. He'll handle this well.
But... And then the brute swung his fist. Dread haunted the forefront of my mind. He was simply too monstrous in size for Holmes to be the victor. There was no comparison. And still I stood, forced to do nothing by Watson, who watched the quarrel with easy breath. I couldn't bear to watch the oncoming strike. I was too afraid.
Would you look at that? The ink on your nails is familiar to me.
I dared a peek between fingers to see Holmes twisting Clave's arm. He was inspecting the boy's fingertips.
When Slater was collecting the deposits, it was observed that his bag was stained. The color was a dirty, dark amber, unusual as most would be content to use black ink. Even you favor black ink. I can see the residue along the cuff of your sleeve. Now here is where the situation becomes quite curious. Your cuff is black, but your fingertips are stained with an amber hue. Tell me, why is that? Ugh.
Clave's darkened face suddenly grew pale. Holmes's reasoning was impressive, and I would have been fast in my praises had I not been baffled by how a man of his build could hold someone so large in place without considerable effort.
See? I said it'd be alright, didn't I?
So you did. I now understand why Watson did nothing. The answer was in our hands. Clave received the deposits from Slater. But where is he hiding them? I pondered the information gathered thus far. He wouldn't walk around with the money in that same bag. What if he only intended to spend part of it for now and pocketed the rest elsewhere?
The bag itself was found in the incinerator, so when did you touch it before Watson brought it here? Whenever that was, we know for certain that you had to have been the one to throw it away. Piss off!
Clave succeeded in shaking off Holmes's hold and wasted no seconds in making another attempt to strike him. It was close, but Holmes was the more skilled of the two.
What? How did you suppose you could hit anyone at that speed? I didn't think God made idiots like you.
The detective needed only to step to the side and avoid the oncoming fist. Here we go. He stepped backwards with some practiced adeptness to the situation and raised his fist, taking on a fighting stance similar to that of a boxer's.
Don't you mock me! Me? Mock you? What are you going on about?
Holmes briefly focused his attention towards us.
I'm only answering his challenge. The two of you are to act as witnesses. You see it, yes? This is self-defense!
Holmes ducked Clave's advance and took an able stance before retaliating.
Ha!
What followed was a sharp blow to the chest. So immediately did Clave's breath leave him that it took all his instinct to keep himself balanced. Indeed, his will was strong. He righted himself and was ready to continue. Yet, in the process, his jacket fluttered briefly, but that was enough for me to spot what was in his breast pocket. Ah, so that's where it is!
We aren't done yet.
Holmes stepped forwards before his advantage was fully lost. He tightened his fist and gave Clave a second strike. And the third, a right cross to the boy's side, was to be the last. His opponent crashed to the ground and held along his ribcage with a pained grimace. I think I can get it! I had to chance it. Induced by bravery, I dived to Clave and reached into his breast pocket.
The hell is wrong with you? Emily!
I want you to explain why this was in your pocket. What I now held was a pure white bag with white lace stitched elegantly near its bottom. It was, quite naturally, the only one of its kind. All of us knew it upon sight. And to be certain, if my own bag was among its belongings, then further proofs were but supplemental. We had our man. When someone commits a theft, whether they're conscious of it or not, they become paranoid someone will steal back from them. It takes little work to rouse someone in that state to anger. No one is an exception. It is simply human nature. Upon your theft, you are left with two options. Keep the money on you, or tuck it away safely elsewhere. And with so much collected, you can't have thought to carry all the money around at once. Were you planning to use it little by little? Was my deposit today's petty cash? Get him, girl.
Your actions are evidence enough. You were so anxious the money would be taken away that you challenged Holmes with barely any provocation. Only a guilty mind with something to hide would have done it.
Fine work, Miss Whiteley.
Holmes spoke barely above a whisper. Did I hear that right?
What's this now? Mr. Mackenzie.
I heard two students having a row in the courtyard, but upon my word, just what do you think you're doing?
I had been too distracted. As I turned to my left, to my right, behind me, I only now saw the number of onlookers who approached.
I shall listen to each of you in the staff room.
Yes, sir.
And you're in the upper six, correct? Clave, I believe. I must have you come with me.
We each gave our account of the event after being taken to the staff lounge.